This is Rodney Ham, Ohio Democrat, trying to get to the bottom of some of the problems we face here in Ohio, especially when it comes to opiate addiction, uh, as well as benzoids, alcohol, and the illicit drugs. The number one killer right now seems to be heroin and opiates, carfentanil and fentanyl, all of which uh, can be monitored pretty closely. And the reason I say that is because they're expensive. So what I did is I posted below a little chart for investigators, DEA, and task force to use as an indicator to let you know there's an issue. If you see somebody, and the police are out every day, especially in a small town, and that person's never at work, you have to start to ask yourself, is this person selling drugs? And I don't know how difficult it would be, but I would go to the pharmacy and I would ask if you're allowed to do that, or I would observe. One answer that I came up with, and I hope that the Democratic caucus here in Ohio takes this on as sort of a party stance, is for these physicians who are getting rich and these pharmaceutical prescription people who are getting rich to join together and form some kind of information transfer with the License Bureau. If we can do it for people that fall behind on child support who are legally allowed to drive and put a holder on their driver's license, surely to God we can save lives and get these impaired drivers off the road. So if you are a perpetual pain care patient, you're not allowed to drive. And I think we should take that extra step, transfer that information to the License Bureau in the state of Ohio, and go ahead and flag their license. And that way we can get them pulled over and get them off the roads. Number two, if you have multiple overdoses in a crowd, uh, I think that you should get that crowd together. I think that you should investigate it. And I think one of the critical parts of that investigation should be to get their email addresses so that we can follow their Google Maps, text messages, and online messaging to find out when the order was placed for the illegal drugs. And then follow the GPS blooper head because they usually have their phone on them if they're drug dealers. And follow that blooper head to the scene of the homicide, which is what it is. Because if you're prescribing medicine and you're not accredited through a university, you're not allowed to prescribe that medicine. So you've poisoned someone and they've died. And that's how you have to look at it. So the solutions to me are simple to find out where the drug came from that caused the death. And that's the end of the investigation for me. I just want to react to the situation. A lot of times, especially with the federal government, they'll get so bloated and their budgets will get so big that they focus too much on preventive maintenance. And I'm not saying preventive maintenance is bad. DARE programs and stuff like that are good. But I think they forget to do the legwork on the online messaging and the blooper heads and stuff like that, because there's no way that a person can order the drugs without using a phone. And all of our phones today and cars have GPS. So you have to ask yourself a little bit, if the coroner's office is investigating it, or they're all just throwing it in the pile and saying, we have a drug addict who overdosed, let's move on. And I hope we're not getting into that mentality, because there's things that you can look for in the drugs, especially if they're illicit drugs, like thumbprints, There's things that drug dealers will use to add to the drug to make it way more so that they can make more money. And when you go through and you find these ingredients, a lot of times you can lock it down, especially if they're ordering some of these ingredients, like Sudafed, off the internet at some of the pharmaceutical sites that you see. I know that people have used drugs that they're prescribed, like Neurontin, to add to it. I know that people have used Vicodins and Percocets. And if you put the legwork in, I think that we can get enough evidence to know who did it. If the prosecutor doesn't feel like he's going to get that conviction, that's where you're going to find the problem at. Because a lot of it is logic, and a lot of times courts want video, audio, and stuff like that. And that's where your messengers, your text messages, the phone numbers uh, come into play. And you also have to look at people who swap phones around, which happens quite a bit. You'll have one person's name on the account, say for instance a parent or a friend of the family, and it'll throw some confusion in the game. So you have to really get your details together to investigate it. If you've got 10 or 11 overdoses in a small part of your community, as voters and taxpayers, I would demand more be done with the local pharmacy and with the group of people where these overdoses are happening. And that way we're getting this stuff off the streets, we're getting it away from our children, and we're learning as we go and collecting information. Thank you for your support, and please talk to your